In 1869, a surviving geologist, after returning from the expedition, proposed a puzzle that still haunts the geological community today. He believed that Earth had been worn away, losing over 1 billion years of its history. Over the next 150 years, the scientific community addressed this issue. Various explanations were proposed, but each one has been difficult to justify, and in ancient Hopi mythology, among the first known inhabitants of the Americas, there is also an explanation for this mystery. Here's what's even more surprising. Across the ocean, in the ancient East, some Chinese classics also record similar stories. So does Earth really have a hidden history? Was it erased by nature or by human hands? And if so, is it possible that we live above a buried world? Could we someday tour it? Welcome to the Deep History Dive. I am Nazamin. 1869. The geologist Powell led a team of 10 people to explore the Grand Canyon. But soon after the expedition entered the canyon, the Chicago Tribune ran a headline. What about the Powell team? Distress in the canyon. Unintentional survival. Everyone was shocked to hear the news, because Powell was known as the one-armed man. He was a legend, although he had lost his right arm in the Civil War. He remained the bravest explorer of his time. He led his team in repeated explorations of landforms in the Midwest of the United States at that time. All geologists lacked first-hand information. Had he been killed this time? It would have been a real tragedy. But who knew just 3 months later, Powell, with his long hair, suddenly reappeared in public. It turned out that the death incident was just a misunderstanding. A media misreport. Powell and his team were safe and sound. But Powell was not very excited upon returning from the expedition. He looked full of doubt. That's because during the expedition, he encountered something that left him puzzled. And it wasn't just a personal mystery. In fact, even today, more than 150 years later, it remains a puzzle for geologists around the world. Let's go back in time to July 1869. Powell was standing on the banks of the Colorado River, looking up at the sky-high cliffs. He saw a vast expanse of hard crystalline rock. These rocks were mostly granite and schist, and they were aligned vertically. Powell noticed that on top of these crystalline formations, there was a 305-meter-thick band of red sandstone. At first, there didn't seem to be anything unusual about the sandstone. It was layered horizontally. But as Powell slowly shifted his gaze, his instincts as a veteran geologist told him something was wrong with this formation. He quickly refocused on the area, called in the rest of the team, and began measuring the thickness of the crystalline rock layer. Measure by measure, he finally understood what was wrong. According to geological estimates, this part of the rock should have been around 3 kilometers thick, but actual measurements showed it was only 150 meters. A full 2,000 meters was missing. So what does that mean? Here's a geological explanation. There are 4 basic principles of STRATR APOD. It's called the principle of original horizontality, lateral continuity, and cross-cutting relationships. Don't be intimidated. I know not everyone understands geology, so let me put it in plain English. It's actually pretty simple. The surface of the Earth, that is, the rock layers in the crust, are usually stacked on top of each other in layers, and their ages are tightly connected. Just like tree rings, layer by layer, older rock formations are found below, and newer ones are on top. The pattern should have been very clear, but the formations in Colorado were very strange. Powell concluded that the crystalline rock below was much older than the red sandstone above. That part made sense. The lower layer should be older, but the real question was, how much older? Because between these 2 layers, more than 2,000 meters of rock formations, which should have been there, were completely missing. And logically, there should have been a layer of rock, a period of geological age, residing between the other bottom crystalline layer and the surface sandstone. But in reality, there wasn't. It's as if a huge portion of Earth's memory just vanished into thin air. Powell wondered, did these rock formations simply disappear? Or is this kind of geological failure, this missing time, unique to the Grand Canyon? Upon examining geological records from the UK, he discovered something important as early as the 18th century. Someone had already noticed this phenomenon. That person was James Hutton, the father of modern geology. On a cliff off the coast of England, he had observed a similar anomaly. He coined the term Huttonian unconformity to describe this strange break in the rock layers. So what was happening here? In short, it's called stratosediment UNCONFORMIT. Why in normal geological processes, a fracture can occur. Old and new rock formations become layered unevenly, disrupting the expected sequence over millions of years. Geological movements can shift, erode, or destroy layers. So what you end up with is definitely not a perfect timeline. Such a fast-moving process involves countless random and accidental events. One place sinks, another place rises with new mountains, and you get this kind of chaos in the rock strata. So what about this theory? Although it can answer some of Powell's doubts, there's still a lot it can't explain, because in Powell's view, the two rock formations on the cliffs of the Grand Canyon had an age gap that was simply too massive. How massive? He didn't know exactly, because in his time, the classification of rock types and their ages was not yet very advanced. But based on Powell's experience, the age gap felt extreme, like a person jumping from 10 years old to 40 years old, with no stages in between. Powell could only borrow Hutton's concept, and eventually came up with a name for this strange phenomenon: large angle unconformity. Helplessly, he left the mystery for future generations to solve. More than 100 years passed. Enter the geologists of the 20th century. It eventually became possible to use radioactive element dating to determine the age of rocks, and scientists found that Powell's speculation was absolutely correct. The crystalline rocks he observed in the Grand Canyon are extremely old. The youngest of them is nearly 1.70 billion years old. And what about the red sandstone layer above? It's actually very young in comparison. The oldest part of it is only 550 million years old. In other words, more than 1 billion years of rock formations in between are completely missing. What drives geologists even crazier is this: the phenomenon of large-scale unconformity is not limited to the Grand Canyon. It's global. So, today's geologists have proposed various hypotheses to explain the mystery Powell left behind, and there are three main theories that are most widely accepted: the snowball Earth hypothesis, the supercontinent Rodinia theory, the multiple event combined effect theory. Let's start with the first one, snowball Earth. The premise of this hypothesis is that at one point in time, Earth was entirely covered in glaciers, a massive snowball planet. Geologists imagine that there are two types of glaciers. One is called a wet glacier. It flows. The other is called a cold glacier. It does not move. Wet glaciers, because of gravity, flow across the land and erode everything beneath them. They can carve out the ground like a giant plow, tearing through the earth, forming deep valleys and fjords. That's why places like Alaska's coastline have such dramatic features. From around 717 million years ago to 580 million years ago, this phenomenon occurred during a period known as the snowball Earth era. The glaciers of this time were capable of scraping away rock formations as deep as 3,000 to 5,000 kilometers. They moved massive sections of the Earth's surface. But here's the next problem. The new sandstone layer we mentioned earlier, its oldest date of formation is about 550 million years ago. Yet snowball Earth ended around 580 million years ago. Leaves a gap of over 30 million years where no rock layers are found. It's as if those 30 million years of Earth's history just vanished, nowhere to be seen. So this gap, the snowball Earth hypothesis, can't fully explain it. Let's look at the second hypothesis, the supercontinent breakup theory. This theory suggests that around 1 billion years ago, there existed a massive landmass on Earth called the supercontinent, Rodinia. I thought it included almost all of today's continental plates, not according to current research. Most of the thermal energy inside the Earth today is released through mid-ocean ridges on the seafloor. But what if there was only one supercontinent? There would have been far fewer ocean ridges than what we have now. The heat inside the Earth couldn't escape as easily. As a result, the Rodinia supercontinent acted like it was sitting on a red-hot iron plate under constant pressure from below. The crust began to bulge upward, in some areas, by as much as 6 to 8 kilometers. This geological process is what we often refer to as the Kitchen Mountain movement. And finally, one day, the pressure became too much. Around 750 million years ago, the supercontinent broke apart, splitting into several major tectonic plates. What happened to Earth's crust after that? During the rapid uplift process, 1 billion years of rock records were erased. But what about this theory? It also has an unavoidable flaw. Did such a supercontinent really exist? Existing geological evidence can't definitively confirm it, yet. There's a third hypothesis, the multiple event combined effects theory. This is essentially a combination of the first two hypotheses. It suggests that alternating glacial periods and tectonic plate movements work together to erase Earth's rock record. Flowing glaciers scraped away surface layers, while plate tectonics caused the crust to rise. Together, they destroyed significant sections of geological history. What all three hypotheses have in common is that they see the Earth's internal forces as the main driver, and they all believe this process occurred over hundreds of millions of years, ultimately leading to this global geological gap. So, these can all be grouped under one school of thought. But beyond these three theories, there is one that takes a completely different approach, the catastrophe hypothesis. This alternative view holds that strange things happened overnight, caused by some sudden force. And overnight here doesn't mean in terms of billions of years, like Earth's age. It means something much faster, maybe hundreds of thousands of years, or even literally overnight. In Hopi prophecy, which we mentioned earlier, the Hopi and indigenous people of North America have passed down a story from generation to generation. According to Hopi tradition, their civilization has gone through 4 worlds. The first world was called Tokpila, destroyed by skyfire. The second world was Tokpa, destroyed by ice. The third world was Kaskurza, ended by a massive war between prehistoric civilizations. And the fourth world is the one we live in today. As for the destruction of Tokpa, the second world, the Hopi have a powerful legend. There were 2 gods who ruled the universe, Hokotama and Tachopa. They fought for control of the world, and their battle triggered a great war. The war was fought in darkness. The severe rotation of the Earth caused chaos. Stars shifted from their original positions. A once warm continent was thrown into an uninhabitable, frozen region. Everything froze. Mountains sank beneath the sea. Water flooded the land. All humans were forced to take refuge underground, and after the war, the gods who governed the poles stabilized them. They thawed the frozen surface. The Hopi people, who had taken refuge underground, emerged to begin the civilization of the third world. Of course, this is just an ancient myth. It can't be taken as historical fact, but the legend has existed for generations. The Earth, as described in Hopi mythology, was transformed in a short time due to ancient wars. Interestingly, similar ideas, shifts in the stars, sun, and moon, also appear in some ancient Chinese texts. Books like the Shanhai Jing and Huainan Zi mention devastating wars. One such story describes a conflict between heaven and earth, and sums up the aftermath with this sentence: the earth tilted to the northwest, the sun, moon, and stars moved for one night. The land is no longer stable in the southeast, so ancient. Waters and dust returned. As for the northwest sky shifting, people felt that the stars as a whole moved toward the northwest. The land is not satisfied with the southeast, suggests that lakes suddenly overflowed, drowning the southeast lands. This could be a portrayal of Earth's environment changing in a very short time, perhaps even instantly, as part of a global catastrophe. The battle between heaven and earth, described in ancient Chinese legends, and the Hopi myth of cosmic war, may both be myths, but their shared description of the stars shifting is more than just coincidence. Could they be describing something that truly happened on Earth, or perhaps something that happened more than once? The mention of shifting stars and massive floods, could it be that the ancients, through the language of mythology, were actually recording these phenomena? As for the overall shift of the stars, it is more likely that the crust beneath our feet experienced global movement, and this kind of event? It's known as an extremely easy phenomenon, but what does that really mean? This theory was proposed by American researcher Charles Hapgood in the 1960s. After his research, he believed that around 60,000 years ago, the Earth's crust shifted. As a whole, simply put, the Earth's crust, like a complete shell, moved relative to the Earth's internal structure. The phrase, the sky tilting northwest, the sun, moon, and stars drifting away, is believed to be a description of this polar shift phenomenon. When the Earth's crust moves as a whole in a southeast direction, people standing on the surface would feel as if the stars in the sky were moving toward the northwest. Of course, during a pole shift, the Earth's crust, due to its physical makeup, cannot move uniformly. The tectonic plates move rapidly, but because of differences in material density and other factors, different parts of the crust will move at different speeds. This results in each section of the crust plates will collide and squeeze each other. In the process, formations become dislocated. In some places, rock layers may be pushed aside, and in others, the rock formations may be completely crushed and no longer exist. When the upheaval stops and the crust stabilizes, the layers of rock that make up the Earth's crust undergo reconfiguration. The parts that were crushed and disappeared may forever puzzle future geologists. They are the lost records of Earth. What's even more surprising is this. The event may have happened more than once. Hapgood speculated that the Earth has undergone 4 major crustal shifts: 160,000 years ago, 80,000 years ago, 60,000 years ago, and between 12,000 to 20,000 years ago. As for the legendary battle between Gong Gong and the special region, it is presumed to have occurred around 60,000 years ago, aligning with one of Hapgood's proposed shifts. Just like the 3 previous hypotheses, this theory also attempts to explain what could have caused such a massive disappearance in Earth's geological record. We still can't get solid evidence from a geological perspective. It seems the Earth's missing layers remain a mystery. The question that puzzled Powell in 1869 is destined to continue haunting the geological community today. All right, that's the end of today's story. See you in the next episode. Thank you very much.